Stop glorifying ADHD. It's not a superpower or a gift. I can't stand the amount of misinformation about ADHD I've been seeing on TikTok and social media lately. It's great that social media is making people realize they might have ADHD. However, there are a lot of things that people say about ADHD that are just wrong or downright harmful. The amount of people that are self-diagnosing because they can listen to a video and comprehend it at 2 times the speed is crazy. Or self-diagnosing because they can speak quickly. These people are literally describing it as a quirky, cute disorder that impacts their life in a positive way, to the extent of describing it as a superpower and glorifying the symptoms. I was recently watching this pretty big YouTuber's most recent upload where she talks about being diagnosed with ADHD. She describes it as a superpower and she's anti-medication because she doesn't want to lose her quote-unquote sparkle, I guess. It just hurts to hear someone with a big platform that I admire spreading misinformation or that mindset about something that has inhibited every aspect of so many people's lives, especially people who have gone undiagnosed for such a long time. In my life, my ignorant parents who don't believe in disorders did not want me to go seek help, despite recognizing the symptoms of ADHD and get a diagnosis because they believe in the same thing this YouTuber was saying. I've spent countless nights and days feeling deflated, wondering why I couldn't just do things like everyone else. ADHD has made so many people's lives so hard that if you do not get help for it, you can develop depression, anxiety, and a whole list of other issues, which makes dealing with ADHD a lot more difficult. It's not a gift or superpower, so please stop saying that it is. Yep, depression, anxiety, bulimia, self-harm, lost jobs, lost friendships, breakups. That's my list. Life is good now, but it definitely wasn't oftentimes. Yeah, the depression, anxiety, substance addiction, executive dysfunction, definitely a superpower. Super powerful way to ruin your life. I love that some people find it cute and quirky though. Frick my life. I had to drop out of high school halfway through because of crippling depression, anxiety, clinical exhaustion, and polysubstance abuse. But hey, at least it's cute how I always misplace my keys. My god, I cannot stand the way my adorable little misplacements make people chuckle and appreciate me. This is my whole life. It doesn't stop when you perceive your denigrating laughter as a superficial bonding moment between pairs. Also, it's not quote-unquote only me having these hilarious little side adventures. Millions of people are inconvenienced constantly like this, which is why we're able to classify it as an observable disorder and not a hilarious quirk of my personality. I don't get to walk through the door and turn this off when it stops being cute. I'm not Kimmy Gibbler. At its worst, it's devastating. And even on a losing things level, it can be expensive and annoying as frick. I paid the ADHD tax for lost things that I didn't find more than I care to remember. Executive dysfunction. That's the B freaking up my life. It's seriously so hard to deal with ADHD by itself, so I can't even imagine the extent of what you've been through. I'm sorry that it's done so much damage to your well-being in life. I'm glad that life is good for you now, because you definitely deserve a break after all that chaos. ADHD untreated and undiagnosed kind of led to all of that. Yep, was treated for depression and anxiety, which did nothing. Then ADHD meds alleviated those symptoms by helping me follow through with crap like laundry, and I was no longer depressed because all my clothes were dirty and I felt useless due to it. Diagnosed or treated at 34, on and off. Antidepressants since I was 23, not realizing it was my ADHD that was making me anxious or depressed, because I couldn't sit at a desk for 8 hours and focus on work on a computer screen. In elementary school, I would take 2 hours to do 10 minutes of homework till I was crying because I couldn't think. So my mom would just do it for me so I could play video games. In high school, it would take me 7 hours to do my AP Calculus homework because I was doing a bunch of other stuff at the same time. In college, I started using caffeine pills and energy drinks to self-medicate. Then once I got into the quote-unquote real world and had to work a soul-crushing 40-hour-a-week office job, that's when the anxiety and depression became so bad I had to go on Social Security, which just turned me into a zombie, so I wouldn't care about my situation. 12 years later, when I'm trying to study to get a better job, that's when I finally asked for stimulant ADHD medications. When the meds are working, I actually like working, because I like being productive for the dopamine hit you get when getting crap done. I have ADHD, and my coworker overheard me talking about how it affects my daily functions one day. And she was asking questions about it, so I was just describing what it's like. And after listing a whole host of really difficult to deal with symptoms, executive dysfunction and auditory processing disorder are very bad for me sometimes, and how they affect me. She latched on to when I said that ADHD is part of the reason I'm constantly interrupting people, and swore from that moment forward that she probably has ADHD because, quote, sometimes she interrupts people too, end quote. I keep trying to explain that that's not really how it works, and that it's not the same thing, but every day she'd say something like, yeah, I mean, I guess we're all a little ADHD, right? Haha. Or something like that, and it was just endlessly frustrating. I didn't get diagnosed until just before I turned 21, and it was a really emotional experience because I had always struggled growing up and nobody ever understood or knew how to help me, and I couldn't even explain what I was experiencing, especially executive dysfunction, because I didn't know there was a name and explanation for that. And so people like that coworker just infuriate me and make me feel so silly and stupid about something that is actually very, very difficult. The quote, we're all a little bit blank, end quote, is just so degrading. When I tried to explain that to someone, they used the blank for autistic. They were meaning well, and I was the bad guy for telling them they were hurtful. Quote, how can you even suggest I try to hurt you? End quote. Exactly. I try to explain why I feel so bad and how not everyone is, quote, a little bit blank, end quote. It's like banging your head into a wall too. It's really discouraging and makes you not even want to have the conversation. I always feel like neurotypicals talk about ADHD like it's some quirky personality trait that makes you, quote unquote, hyper. And then I feel like the things I struggle with are not valid and I shouldn't be having such a hard time. I don't know. I feel like I'm constantly switching back and forth between valid and feeling like I'm actually just making things up and having no, quote unquote, real reason to be struggling because of the way people talk about ADHD and the symptoms, if that makes any sense. Yes, it does make sense. I think your struggle is valid, and I find the self-doubt is just crippling at times. Like, yes, if we only focus on the positives, it is not that bad. Exactly. There are things that I feel like can be worked into an advantage personally, but that doesn't discredit the things that are infinitely more difficult. I know how disheartening it can be to talk to neurotypicals that won't even try to get it. I always describe my ADHD like having two minds where you have to engage one part to get anything done, or else it's like having multiple conversations or a radio station going on in your head at the same time. But wait, don't engage too hard, or mine too might also get distracted, and then you're disengaged completely from reality. Quote, oh yeah, totally. I mean, sometimes I wake up and my knees hurt, so I don't get enough potassium in my diet. So like, I guess we're all a little bit paralyzed from the waist down, right? End quote. Someone I genuinely respected said that to me once. I have never been able to truly feel connected to them ever since. It's like after that, they ceased to seem like someone who understood me or empathized. In the same token, it made it much easier for me to empathize with people who had a hidden struggle like that. You don't really know what anyone goes through to exist in the society, and diminishing them doesn't really help anyone. Quote, let's just sprinkle a little mental illness in our lives to make it more spicy, end quote. Is a take I'm really not here for when so many of us go through a daily battle with our minds. When I have to fight like heck just to make it through one day without it falling apart, I don't have patience for anyone trying to manipulate the conversation, dismiss my struggle, and include themselves to have a cop-out. Perhaps she was trying to express empathy, latching on to an experience she could relate to, but more likely she's just a dummy. It's frustrating when someone gives an invalidating response like that. But truthfully, everybody exhibits symptoms of some disorder or another sometimes. It's why the disorders all include stipulations in their diagnosis criteria about many symptoms, how long they have been experienced, and especially the impact they have on the person's functioning. That's what makes the difference between a clueless jerk who obliviously interrupts other people sometimes and a person with ADHD. I take comfort that when I explain my ADHD, people are generally quite forgiving of a few social indiscretions, but we all still hate the clueless jerks, winky face. Just reminds me of every person who claims to be, quote, a bit OCD, end quote, when they mean they're particular. It always feels extremely insulting to anyone with an actual diagnosis. Awkwardly enough, Michael J. Fox's feature in an episode of Scrubs finally put OCD into perspective for me. Edit, like when it aired.